Hey, good evening, everyone, and very glad that we are here together again for late night coffee talk. Got my coffee. Hope you do too. Hope you got a lot of questions. I can imagine it's been about a month since we were together, although that was not the intention. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a bit. But anyway, get your questions in, right? You can see it down there at the bottom. You can email your questions to coffeetalk@dtnm.org or drop them in chat there on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter, right? I mean, I think we're aggregating them all now. So be sure to get your questions in. I've got a few that have been emailed in that we'll address tonight. So I think between what's come in via email and what you guys submit, we'll have a pretty good evening all the way around. Lots of really insightful questions. And of course, everyone is wanting to know our take on what's going on and kind of what I mean. Let's be honest. We've had about a year's worth of news in 1 month, so there's a lot to unpack, I'm sure, for you guys. Before we get started, let me go ahead and just again thank you for being here tonight. For those of you who are brand new, I'm Daniel Miller, president of the Texas Nationalist movement, and this is Late Night Coffee Talk. This is where I take a break, I fire up the camera and the microphone, and I take your questions. And I have been doing this for quite some time, although it has been a little less regular. Used to do it every week, but time, it's me taking a break, and not exactly like there's been a lot of things happening where I could take a break, right? So bottom line is we have a break. It is pre-scheduled, and I am here with you tonight. Be sure, if you're watching on YouTube, to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Additionally, if you're on Facebook, be sure to like, share, and comment. And the same thing on Twitter. Be sure to, X. We got to start using the real name, right? Be sure to retweet it. Be sure to do everything you can, hit like it. I mean, hit all the bells and whistles, right? We've got to defeat the algorithms. Had a very long conversation with our executive vice president, Nate Smith, just a couple of days ago, talking about how we are still getting choked down, getting throttled. But I will say this, as of right now, for the first time ever, we actually have more viewers of Coffee Talk coming in via X than we do on YouTube. So this is pretty exciting, and I think pretty telling that you've got a platform like X that has been pretty good about not throttling down things related to Texas. We're very happy about that. So be sure, when you're over there and you're sending out your tweets, be sure to hashtag Texit everything. Definitely helps. All right. I hope you got your coffee. Before I tear into the questions, I do want to start off just with a little explanation. Many of you guys saw that the second Wednesday of this month, we were supposed to have, you saw a scheduled late night coffee talk. And as I talked about the last time we were together last month, the intention was moving forward. So we'll have enough time to handle the Texas News podcast. And there is a new podcast coming called the Texas Insider, that we would start doing this again on a regular basis, but every week was not going to be something that we were going to be able to work around the schedule, especially as we're getting ready to push toward the next legislative session. So there was a commitment that we were going to start scheduling these on the second and fourth Wednesdays of every single solitary month, so that we weren't having these massive dry spells. We're going to get them on the calendar and just absolutely just try to make sure we could work around them. And indeed, you were not hallucinating. There was one scheduled for the second Wednesday earlier in the month. However, many of you saw that on June 30th, we got word that my good friend, a good friend of the Texas Nationalist movement, Dave Roberts, member of our advisory board, that he passed away suddenly. A call that you don't want to get. And it was sudden. and it was shocking to a lot of people. Dave was, he owns CEO and president and founder of Defiance Press, who published the Texas book. He was a lot of things, but Dave was my friend. I talked to him just about at least every other day. And it has been that way for well over a decade now. As a matter of fact, I happened to look it up. The first time that I met him was when the T&M opened our first ever office in 2009. He and Randy Council, they two good friends, hopped in a car and drove from north of Houston over here to the office opening to that very tiny kind of rundown office, but it's what we had. It's what we could afford at the time. And Dave was connected with the T&M ever since. And so, so as you can imagine, that first week of July, which was when everyone was celebrating the Independence Day holiday, although they don't call it that, stores with signs that say we'll be closed on on the 4th of July for July the 4th. I mean, stupid stuff, right? A whole commentary I could do on that, but the point here is that they had pushed his funeral off to that second week, and so you top that all off with the fact that there was the potential for a hurricane to come in. The funeral wound up getting pushed back in the week, which would have overlapped with late night coffee talk, and that just I needed to be there to celebrate the life of my friend, and so we had to bounce that out. And of course, as it so happened, they got directly hit by the hurricane, knocking out power to over 3 million people. I mean, it was pretty massive. And so they did push it back to the following week. So, it's been a bit of a sad time. I can tell you that from my perspective that, when you have people that become friends and fellow travelers down the Texas road that you become very close with, and you lose them and they don't get to see the finished product after putting time and effort into it, you have some conflicted emotions. Obviously, you're sad anytime you lose someone, but the feeling that gets me a lot of times, unfortunately, is that of anger. I get really, really frustrated, when in the midst of all this, we had sent out an email for people to submit electronic testimony for an interim committee hearing that was happening today. It just so happened it happened today. And I won't go into the details about it, but I got an email back from someone saying, well, I don't want to submit electronic testimony because I'm afraid to go on a list. It's like, wait a minute. We've got people that have been out in public and working, and it's okay for them to go out and put their names on the line, but you can't even send a simple electronic message. And so, yes, I get frustrated. I get angry. It makes me upset because were it not for the fact that there are a lot of folks out there, unfortunately, that do the Texas hokey pokey. They put 1 foot in and then 1 foot out, right? The toe dippers, this would already be a done deal. When people ask me all the time, I get asked all the time, what's taking so long? Well, it's not me. It's not me. It's not people like Dave or Don Tier or Roger Evans or Dan Armour or Dave Mundy or, any of these other folks. We're all out here busting our humps to make this happen. The thing that needs to be impressed upon everyone else who says they support Texas is, what are they doing? How much effort, how much work, how much of their resources, what are they putting in? Because all of us are wrung out, right? But we're happy warriors. We don't complain about it because we know that the end product is worth it. So, when we lose someone that's close to us, it does make me upset. with the people that have every excuse under the sun why they cannot or will not do something. Oh, I can't work with this person over here because I don't like their personality. Well, you can't imagine how many times we've had to choke it down and put personality differences aside because the mission is more important, right? The little stuff like that is no excuse whatsoever to be inert, to go into neutral, to do nothing. That, my friends, is just an excuse. And what it tells me a lot of times is that when people use those excuses, they did not believe in it, really believe in it to begin with. And so I shove that all aside. I say that to you tonight so you understand that, yes, you were not hallucinating. There was supposed to be one of these the second Wednesday of this month, and to indicate that moving forward, the second and fourth Wednesdays is when you can expect late night coffee talk. But I do that to encourage those of you out there that are fighting it and to remember that we're doing it for future generations, but we're doing it also to honor the legacy and the memory of those that put in time and effort and resources that did not or could not make it to the finish line, that reached their date of expiration before we reached our second date of liberation. And so we do it to honor their memory, because I'm not going to let the work that they have put in and the time and the belief and the mental and emotional capital, and many of us, I mean, it's physically taxing as well, but I'm not going to let that be in vain. No more than I could turn my back on the legacy and the memory of those men who gave their lives at the Alamo. Different circumstances, but the fact that these people, like Dave, chose to live for independence up until the point of their death means that we need to honor them. And, we got to honor the legacy and the work of guys like Dave Roberts or Dan Armour or Don Tier or Roger Evans or Dave Mundy or Lauren Savage or Charlie Dorick, or the list goes on and on and on. So if you will forgive me that I blew our date on the second Wednesday of this month, I appreciate it. There's obviously been a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on. We're I mean, it's not like I wasn't on the horse before. Sometimes you got to play hurt, right? But we just weren't here together on the second Wednesday, but we will rectify that moving forward. All right. That being said, let's move over here to some of the questions. Man, you guys are stacking them up. Yeah, I'm seeing some of the comments in the chat, and I agree. I saw that email. A lot of chatter going on about the email that I got, and I'm not gonna post it, but it was pretty ridiculous. I'm not gonna lie, and it hit wrong because it came in at the wrong time. All right, so let's go through some of these. Tell you what, let me do this. Let me go to email first, because we had some of these. This one is from Jake. Mr. Miller, relatively new to the movement, but I firmly believe Texas should take back its identity and its independence. He sent two questions. I'm only going to take one because it's limit one per customer without a coupon, sir. Sorry about that. But it says Texas receives over $100 billion a year in federal assistance annually. What does Texas look like in regard to weaning itself off of federal aid? And where does that put programs that currently provide this assistance to those in need? Jake, so here's the thing, and I'm not going to break it down into the minutia tonight, but I will tell you there is a video on our YouTube channel about this. There's a downloadable from our website. If you go to tnm.me/federal money, that breaks this down. But here's the bottom line. Texas gets less from the federal government than it puts into the federal system. Obviously, the figures change year on year, but that range is somewhere between $103 and $160 billion annually that Texans put into the federal system that we never get back, right? So when you look at that flow of money coming from the federal government, understand that first and foremost, that means that money originated from the pocket of a Texas taxpayer. It went to Washington, D.C., took a 40 to 60% haircut, and then came back with strings attached, which those strings are typically, state of Texas, we need you to set up this program and run it according to federal guidelines, aka the most inefficient way possible. And then, by the way, we're only going to pay you for part of the program. Now you got to go back to the Texas taxpayers and pick up the other 40 to 60% to fund this thing, right? And that's not even including discussing how much of that money that comes back is actually not even out of a Texas taxpayer's pockets. It's on debt, loans taken out by the federal government on the heads of our children and grandchildren and their children and their children and their children, on and on generations, $34 trillion worth. So, you have to disabuse yourself of this idea that somehow Texas can't survive without federal money. The truth is, Texas can't survive with that federal leech on our back, sucking money out of the pockets of Texas taxpayers, when so many Texans right now are having a near impossible time making ends meet. So, how are we going to do without federal money? We're going to do quite well, because that money will stay here and will stay in our economy and not be siphoned off to these Washington, D.C. bureaucrats who do nothing more than eat from our substance. They take and they take and they take. And then they push one-size-fits-none policies and programs down our throats that don't really serve the people that they say they're supposed to serve. So, Jake, I would just encourage you, go download that. Go to tnm.me/federal money. You can download that. Additionally, look on our YouTube channel. You will see a video. It's about 15 minutes long, I think, if I remember correctly, that really goes into this entire scenario. All right. Here's one from Michael. Michael knows my sweet spot. He knows that I like to talk about Texas versus White. Michael says, how much of a challenge are we looking at in regards to overturning Texas versus White? I will tell you our take is that Texas versus White has been effectively overturned by the Supreme Court case Jacobson v. Massachusetts. There is a whole kind of dissertation on Texas versus White. In fact, I want to say that there is an episode of the Texas News podcast where I dissect Texas v. White. But the bottom line is someone may want to try to use that in regards to this. And I will tell you that I'm very much looking forward to watching the nail placed in the coffin of Texas versus White. I will say that although people will say that it hasn't been tested, I don't think the opposition wants to really test Texas versus White because it is such a horrible Supreme Court decision. So, all right. Hey, thanks for that question, Michael. All right. Okay, here's a fun one. I was actually asked this question by Newsweek, which I don't know if you guys saw the recent Newsweek article. It's posted on the TNM news site. If you go to news.tnm.me, you'll find it. But I was asked essentially the same question. They wanted to know what we thought Kamala Harris winning the presidency would do to the chances of Texas. And I mean, it's gonna cause us to explode. It will accelerate this process. It will seriously compress timeframes. You got to remember, Harris was part of the dynamic duo that basically crisscrossed Texas, threatening to burn our house down. And, you even had Republican lawmakers congratulating Biden and Harris when they got elected. Texas lawmakers congratulating them on getting elected. It's like, wait a minute. If I have a couple of arsonists who have done nothing for a year and a half but pledged to burn my house down, I'm not going to congratulate them for successfully getting their hands on a can of gas and some matches. Okay. Well, this is essentially it. People, you got to understand, Texas and the TNM, this is not a Republican or a Democrat issue. This is a Texan issue. And while Harris and cohorts may be pumping it up hardcore down here in Texas, the bottom line is that those federal policies are being forced upon us by a federal system that believes in its own supremacy. And so consequently, you see those policies, which are antithetical to what Texans want. Look at the border and immigration and debt, and I mean all of these things. You're going to see Texans accelerate that pace toward Texas becoming an independent nation. So the chances of successfully Texaning, very high, David, very high. Okay. Oh, that's a fun one. Air Cool Dude says, will the federal government declare war on us if we secede? Number one, if we follow the process, we follow a lawful process, we make it extraordinarily difficult for them to do something stupid like that. Now, that being said, is it possible they would? Only if they want to lose pretty much every other state in the union. This is something that I've discussed at length. This the sky's falling Chicken Little stuff about how Texans getting to vote on their independence somehow sparks a second civil war is a bunch of hogwash. The fact is that the federal government, they are in such a bad position if a state does like Texas is doing, which is we're moving it through a lawful, legislative, peaceful process, and we're not doing stupid things, and we're not saying stupid things. We're just going and saying Texans believe at the polls that we should reassert our status as an independent nation. And then Texans respond to that question, and they respond in the affirmative, and then we begin that process. It paints the federal government into a corner. And I could go into all the reasons why it is a stupid decision for them, and how it would cause them to end up probably with about 10 stars on their flag by the time they're done. But the bottom line is that and the question is, will they declare war on us? Not if they want to preserve the rest of the United States. It's just the way that it is. But thank you for that question. All right. Okay. See, this was another double up. Michael, I just covered that one. Are they better? I sort of covered this one. So Michael says, are chances better for Texas to happen if Kamala wins? Look, Texas is happening. And it's something that people really need to understand. Words matter, right? We believe that words matter. And so you need to understand that Texas is not the destination. Texas is the process that gets us to the destination. What is the destination? Independence, right? Texas becoming a self-governing independent nation. That is the destination. And so Texas is the process that gets us there. Well, Texas is already happening, man, right? This process has already begun. When you're seeing increasing poll numbers on this issue, the fact that they're even polling this issue, the fact that you've had the Texas Independence Referendum Act filed twice, and it will get filed again, the fact that you have candidates that are elected to office that have openly pledged to give Texans a vote on this issue. I could go down all the criteria, but the bottom line is Texas is happening. So really the question is it accelerated? The timeline is the timeline. Would it give a sense of urgency to people? Probably. But for me, I'll just tell you, it's a sense of urgency that I feel that a little bit of foresight they should have had all along, right? But does that accelerate the process? Probably. You get people with a high sense of urgency, and you can make a lot of things happen in a really short amount of time. So, all right, Michael, thank you for that question. Hey, I'm rolling through these, right? Some good ones. Man, you guys are really good. Okay, I tell you what, let me come back over here to email really quickly. Judy says, when will we be able to vote on Texas? I am ready. I am ready as well. You will be able to vote on it in a real meaningful way, when the Texas Independence Referendum Act is passed, and then you will be able to vote on it in a meaningful way. So looking forward to that day myself because, frankly, I'm ready for a vacation. Okay, this is interesting. Yeah, okay. This is Charles. Charles says, with the events of the past week plus, yeah, it's been a month. Like we haven't even talked about the kidnapping. That's just I mean, I had a stand up with our developers 2 nights ago, and you know, as I was kind of relaying everything, just kind of reviewing everything that's happened over the past month, I said, you know, the only two horsemen we're missing are pestilence and famine, right? I mean, that's pretty much what we're missing. But Charles says, with the events of the past week plus, how would an independent Texas possibly change the political landscape as opposed to the U.S. political structure? Look, I think an independent Texas, and I want to be sure to answer specifically your question because you specify an independent Texas, and the thing about it is an independent Texas as how it would affect the political landscape becomes a comparison, basically a compare and contrast model. It becomes something that is sort of sprung from the American tradition that has virtually a governmental a republic, constitutional republic structure. You know, structurally that's what it is. But has a distinctly different political, economic, and cultural viewpoint. So it becomes something that sits right here in the backyard of the remaining United States that becomes a point of comparison and contrast for the governance of the United States federal government. And so, from that standpoint, I think that has some long lasting impacts. I think that Texas, as an independent nation, becomes a beacon of hope to other states that they might also be better off as self-governing independent nations. And you know, that's a a decision that that those people in those states have to weigh out. But I think that Texas, as an independent nation, sitting right here, right close to all these other states, becomes something that other people can look at. You know, think about what examples states have right now. I mean, you'll see it. The folks that are going to be at the Texas Blueprint seminar that I'm giving on Saturday are going to see this as we look at one of the sections of it. As I'm talking about getting the vote, I talk about all of the independence referendums that have been held around the world, and of course, obviously, to the most recent that we talk about a lot are Scotland and the UK with Brexit. And you know, you look at the examples that we have, and unfortunately, we've got to look sort of Canada to the north, which is, you know, under Trudeau's administration, pretty much, you know, Chairman Mao light. You know, your examples of independent nations that are sort of similar all have to come out of Europe, and that's not even really that similar, or to the south as we look into Mexico, Central America, and South America. And so there are no real good examples for people in the states of the United States to make comparisons with. And independent Texas does that. And so I think it begins to impact the U.S. political landscape by becoming a major part of the conversation where people in states that are still in the union can point to Texas and say, this is what Texas is doing. It's working. It's very successful. Why are we not doing this here? Right. And then leading to that next question, which is, well, look, if Texas can become a self-governing independent nation, why not us? And look, that conversation is already happening, right? Not just as a consequence of, you know, down the road of Texas becoming independent, but because of the significant strides that we've made with Texas, it's beginning to fuel independence movements in other states. Another article that was published recently, I think in Daily Mail or Newsweek, I can't remember, about our efforts and highlighting, the launch of Cal Exit and New Hampshire Exit, and talking about the Alaskan Independence Party and Free Louisiana and all of these things that are happening. The media unfairly, I think, painted it as we're out here trying to break up the United States. It's not the point at all. What we're trying to do is we're trying to work with and communicate with people in other states that want to explore and seek out independence for their state. So I think that our efforts now, even before we become an independent Texas, are really changing up that landscape some, but nothing like when people have a concrete example of what it looks like right here in their own backyard. So, Charles, that was a great question. As you can tell, I really enjoy talking about that. Okay, let us take a look. Man, we've already blown through our 30 minutes of our time here. Okay. That's a good question. Is there a chance a simple guidebook will be made? Anytime I try talking about Texas, I get shut down because of fear of the U.S. government. I'll tell you, it's a great question. There is no real antidote for fear, in my opinion. Knowledge helps, getting people informed. But fear is really, it's an internal personal trait. It's I'm not going to say it's character, a character trait, because I don't think it is, but fear is a real personal struggle. I have said that in the first several years of our work in the T&M, the biggest challenge that we had was we had to overcome probably one of the biggest cases of lack of self-confidence that you could imagine, and not on our part. We ran into a lot of people who wanted Texas independence to happen, but just had like, I don't know that we can do that. I don't know if it's possible. I don't know if we can be an independent nation. It's like, wait a minute. If Texas can't become a self-governing independent nation, then who can? I look at these 80 some odd plus referendums that I put in that presentation, and I'm like, these people had the stones, whether their referendum won or lost, they had the stones to stand up, the character, the fortitude to say, we are the best people to govern ourselves, and stand up and fight for that, to the point that it went on a ballot, and push and work hard and do all those things. And so I don't know that a guidebook is going to do that, but look, we have plenty of information for people that want to learn more about this. Beyond the Texit book, I would recommend that you point people to the Texit Now site, right? If you go to texit.tnm.me, or if you go to the main page of our website at tnm.me, there's a whole section on there that you can, a place where you can click on, and it will take you, and it answers the vast majority of people's questions. Obviously, we need to add more. There's more questions and answers that we're getting in now that we've never gotten before, but that's going to be the only thing about it. We can pile on as much information as you want. We know, if you look at anything about us, you know that we understand this issue like no one else does. We have compiled academic data. We've compiled polling data. We've compiled economic data. We understand the constitutional and international law aspects of it. We got it all. But we could throw all of that at one person, and if personally in their gut they're still afraid, that information's not going to help them. For people who are truly afraid, there is no answer to any of their questions that will satisfy or allay that fear. What we can do, though, is we can utilize that information to help them understand that oftentimes the fears that they have are unfounded and unwarranted, right? Like this idea that Texas will touch off a civil war, or that the thing that Project Fear, it's why the opposition is called Project Fear, that one of the things Project Fear talks about is how Texas means that grandma doesn't get her Social Security, and we want grandma to die in a ditch. And we're able to provide the information like I did for the gentleman earlier when I said that, look, here's the bottom line. We overpay into the federal system. And so we keep that money here. And even if the federal government welched on their obligation to pay Social Security or federal pension benefits, which, let's be honest, the federal government is nigh insolvent. And so anyone who thinks that those benefits are going to be there in the long term is about as delusional as you can possibly get. The biggest fear to seniors and retirees doesn't come from Texas independence. In fact, that is the only lifeline that they have. No, the biggest concern for them should come from the federal government, who has essentially said, look, this program's broke, and we're going to keep borrowing or raising taxes on future generations. And when that doesn't work, you're just out in the cold. I mean, what they're talking about, we won't take care of grandma. We're going to let grandma die in a ditch. These are the same people who implemented a healthcare system that put health panels in place that wants to send grandma to the glue factory, right? So I would not listen to them on those sorts of things. But that being said, I digress. The bottom line here is that there's lots of information. If you go to our website, it's tons and tons and tons of information. I would encourage people, look, if you want a guidebook, there is no little guidebook for this. There's the Texas book, which I would recommend as kind of a get started. All of those issues, ancillary additional questions you can find on the Texas section of the website. Go to texas.tnm.me. But thank you for your question. Okay, let's take a look. Man, you guys are super chatty tonight. Oh, this is great. And thank you to everyone who are dropping the links in the chat. This is great. Sorry. I have to go over here occasionally and peek because I'm watching some of you guys tear up Texas versus White. And that makes me happy. Okay. Okay. This is an interesting one. Rosso, Texas says YouTube decided to ban my account for whatever reason. But what do you think about the current situations globally, like the other separatist movements in West Papua, and like the other separatist movements? Yeah, it looks super interesting question, and kind of dovetails nicely on what I talked about earlier, which is, all of these examples that we have overseas. You had that referendum in Bougainville, which we've worked with. Dr. Matt Kortrup, who was instrumental in that independence referendum. It's happening. Independence is happening everywhere, this decentralization. And as you see these big behemoths, these large governments, these one size fits none governments, you're going to see it more and more and more. And this is a globalist nightmare. Look, the globalists thought that they could control self-determination. They thought that they could control it. Okay. And you saw that when they pushed for the United Nations pushed its decolonialization program, right? You saw a big spike because of the United Nations decolonialization program. You saw a big spike in the growth of independent nation states. Thank you. And that was part of it. But the problem is that when they did that, they began to really focus on establishing an international set of norms or a framework. And so they pushed this decolonialization effort, and look, it was the first world powers, right? And really kind of spurred on by globalists. But in doing so, to give it legitimacy, they had to establish a set of international norms for self-determination. I mean, it's baked in. I think it's even Article 1, Section 2 of the UN Charter, right? Which is kind of interesting because self-determination, the right of self-government is Article 1, Section 2 of the Texas Constitution. But when they did that, they effectively set the stage for any people anywhere, right? I mean, they basically opened the rest of the world up to an acknowledgement of the Jeffersonian principles of self-government and self-determination. And so, you see what they expected was this spike for decolonialization, and then it would probably just taper off. And that's not what happened at all. You get into the 90s where you see the Soviet sphere begin to get deconstructed because the center could not hold, right? Centralized governments fail. And that's exactly what happened. And all these Soviet satellites began to spin off and get their independence, which just fueled the fire for self-determination, self-government. I mean, it's one of those things, Rosso, that I watch. I like to watch like a hawk, because at the end of the day, even though there are no two independence movements that are alike, that are exact copies of one another, you can't take the Scotland playbook and use it here. You can't use the Texas playbook and use it in Louisiana. That kind of thing. But even though you can't, you can still learn a lot of lessons. There's a lot to learn from all of these. And so, yes, we stay on top of it. I would encourage other people to do so as well. All right. Okay, this is a good one. Hey, and thank you, K9. This is from K9 Raven. Thank you for the super chat. Really do appreciate it. If you are on YouTube, consider giving us a little jingle. We don't have Kamala Harris money. We don't have $90 million sandbag somewhere waiting on something to happen, right? So drop us some change. We need all the help we can get. But here's the question. K9 Raven says, how much do you think Governor Abbott's visits to other countries and understandings with are going to help our cause? I think they've already helped immensely. I talked about this on one of the previous podcasts. If you go back to the Texas News podcast, and I think it was titled, How Close is Texas to Leaving the Union? And it's one of the things I talk about. And I talk about the Montevideo Convention, right, which is there was a international convention that was signed that deals specifically with this concept of a state, right? The concept of a nation state is pretty new historically. And so you've had some conventions. And so the Montevideo Convention was in the 1930s, and they got together and they said, okay, look, we got to start setting some definitions. And one of those definitions is a state. And in it, they established 4 criteria for the state, right? There's a recognition component, internal recognition. I mean, there's 4 components, and I'm not going to tie into it because I could be here all night. But the 4th component for the definition of a state is the ability to transact business, right, or to engage in foreign affairs. That's a paraphrase. It's not the exact terminology. But that's what the 4th criteria is, the ability to carry out the functions of a state internationally, to be able to have international relations. And so we understand that under the U.S. Constitution, that is a delegated function to the federal government, one of the very few that was delegated to the federal government to deal with, which is that way you would have a unified front, a unified foreign policy, okay? And for the day and age, it made complete sense, right, from an efficiency standpoint. However, because that's delegated, Texas cannot. That's why our Secretary of State handles elections and all those sorts of things, and not foreign affairs. And while technically Abbott's actions are not, I would say, not ambassadorial, they are nonetheless telling in that Texas is engaging in its own foreign policy, economically speaking, right? We're not executing trade deals. We're not, setting up, signing mutual defense treaties. We're not signing on the international covenants, treaties, and agreements, these multilateral agreements. But what is happening is that Texas is essentially setting the stage so that the case can be made that Texas has the ability to conduct foreign affairs, right? We have the ability to do that. And so, so what if it's a trade office in Taiwan or, an economic partnership to promote industries between here and India or any of those others? What they are all doing is they are effectively making the case, whether intentional or unintentional, that Texas meets all of the criteria under the Montevideo Convention for the definition of a state. It doesn't say that you have to, it's not specific that you have to engage in treaties and things of that nature. It just says you have to have the ability to do so. And so, although we can't engage in treaties and things of that nature, what we are doing is showing our ability as Texas to be able to go out and engage in these informal economic partnership agreements, which are really, I mean, with the exception of a piece of paper and some signatures, pretty much treaty. So, how does it help? I think it helps immensely. Is the more we can do to make our case for Texas becoming independent and being very close to doing so, the better off we are. It goes back to that question from before. How do you allay people's fears? Well, if they understand that the gap that we have to jump over to go from where we are to independence is this big and not this big, then you've allayed some of those fears. So anyway, K9 Raven, thank you very much. And again, thank you so much for the super chat. We really do appreciate it. Excuse me. Been a lot more talk and less coffee. All right. Let us check and see where we are. A reminder, look, you've still got a couple of minutes to get your question in. If you want to get it in real quick, it's right there on the screen. You can email it to coffeetalk@etnm.org, or you can drop it in chat on YouTube, or you can hit us on Twitter or Facebook in the Facebook comments. I think I've taken them from all over tonight, so that's really nice. Oh, yeah. Great question. Thank you very much. What is in a name? I was going to say something about it at the end, but I'll tell you now. Yeah, so many of you probably got an email. Dr. Phil episode is coming, right? So there was an announcement made. You guys, I don't know if you know, but I think it was sometime last month. I made the drive up to Dr. Phil's studios and shot an episode along with our good friend Dan Goldvach and with our other good friend Carla Garrick from New Hampshire from NH Exit. And we shot an episode of Dr. Phil's show. And that is going to air. If you didn't get the email, excuse me, look for it in your inbox. May have gone to spam because you know how these email service providers are. But that will air Monday night. I believe it's at 7 p.m. And we'll have, as we get closer to the date, we'll have watch times and all that kind of stuff. I think it might have even been in the email, but that's coming. And looking, excuse me, looking forward to that one because it was an exciting discussion. I'm not going to lie. I had a lot of fun. And, it doesn't hurt that Dr. Phil and I share the same barber. Think about that. All right. But anyway, that's what's going on. And if you go search for his show, Dr. Phil Primetime, you'll find it. You'll find a listing of all the channels and where that is, but it will be Monday night. They have not notified us that it's been changed or pushed. Which, as you can imagine, given all of the breaking news that's happening, with what happened to Donald Trump and then with Biden not running for re-election and questions about whether he was even alive or dead. I mean, that guy, Joe Biden, was Schrodinger's cat for 5 days, right? But with all that happening, I was kind of afraid that they might push it, but we've got no word. So Monday night, 7 p.m. Texas time, and you can find all of the stuff on Phil's website. So definitely looking forward to it. Thanks for asking about that, because if I'd forgotten to mention that, I would be in so much trouble when this is over with. Okay, here's a good one. I like this one, and yeah, we're running short on time, so be sure to get your questions in. OGK9com, okay, says, if Texas is ranked 7th or 8th largest economy after secession, what would that look like in comparison? Yeah, so right now we're and I think as of the last numbers, we're the 8th largest economy in the world. My understanding is that the likelihood is pretty high that by the time the numbers hit the fourth quarter of this year, that will be perhaps at number 7. There's got to be some other things that need to transpire for that to happen, but we're well on track to busting out of number 8 and moving up to number 7. That being said, what would it look like post Texas? Well, understand that we're the 8th largest economy, in spite of our relationship with the federal government, right? So I'll give you 2 things that will help couch this, and I've actually already mentioned one of them. But the first one that I previously mentioned was the amount that we overpay into the federal system, that $103 to $160 billion annually. If that money stayed here in the Texas economy and circulated around, and went into, prosperity for our families, but into new business startups or investment, imagine what that does to our economy, right? And, we're talking, 1 point whatever trillion we're at now. And you may say, well, 103 to 160 billion is a drop in the bucket, but not when you pump that into your economy and it goes into investments and savings and start circulating through business, new business startups, right? So you've got that much money back into the Texas economy. What does that look like, right? Well, that could definitely bump us up, one or 2 places, right? But really and truly, here's what I think will have, really 2 things that will have the biggest impact on taking us to maybe the 4th or 5th largest economy in the world. The first one is going to be when Texas floats its own currency, right? We can talk about, a short-term informal adoption of the U.S. dollar as a bridge to get us to a currency. But when you look at the fact that Texas is already well on the way to establishing its own currency, understand that when Texas floats not a hyperinflationary currency like the U.S. dollar, but when Texas floats its own, it becomes, almost going back to one of those first questions, that comparison, right? All of a sudden now people have a currency that is based in an economy that is business friendly, that has no income tax, that believes in a stable currency and not this inflationary, we can't find the off switch for the printer kind of thing. So I think floating our own currency would be massive for us. I mean, it could take us to becoming a major, not that we're not already a major player in the global economy, but it could be massive for us. And then the second is, without the federal government, you lose the effects of that federal regulatory accumulation, right? I talk about it in the Texas book. There's some articles about it on the site, but effectively, just for those who haven't read any of those things, there were a couple of studies out of George Mason University a few years back where they study the effects of what they refer to as federal regulatory accumulation, aka the federal government just slathers regulations on business and they just layer it and layer it and layer it. And what they found was that causes a compounding 2% compression of GDP, right, annually. So that thing compounds annually. And so when you do that, you realize that it's suffocated about 85% of our value out of our economy. And so you take away that federal overregulation, that federal regulatory accumulation, and then you couple that with Texas being business friendly, right? You couple that with no state income tax. You couple that with a Texas currency, and you couple that with an additional, $100 to $160 billion back into our economy, not being sucked out by the Leviathan in Washington, D.C., and all of a sudden, I think you could make a very strong case where Texas could potentially be the 3rd or 4th largest economy in the world. I mean, it's the sky's the limit. It really is just up to us. And I say 3rd or 4th because you're asking me to speculate. And so I don't have hard data to say we could be 3 or 4. But what I do have is I have an understanding of what Texas independence does for us and how it takes the governor off of the engine of our economy. And in doing so, even under these circumstances, we're the 8th largest economy in the world. We will probably be the 7th before the year is over. You take all those things, and I can't see any reason why Texas can't climb a few rungs on that ladder. So really great question, and thank you for that. Okay, my friends, that is going to have to be the last one for tonight. Look, I really appreciate it. Mm. I've got a couple of reminders. Apologies for those of you that I could not get to your questions tonight. There are some good ones, and we'll see if we can't sandbag those for the next time that we're together. But got a couple things. I mentioned this earlier. This Saturday, I'm going to be headed to Greenville to host our first ever Texas Blueprint seminar. Yes, I am going to speak for a day. Thank goodness there are going to be breaks. But that being said, going to be doing it up there in the beautiful Texan theater. It's a beautiful place, and just very excited to be up there to do this. It is going to not be a recitation of the Texas book, but it is going to be a bit of a blueprint, right? So we're going to be talking about at this seminar, talking about really and truly the 4 stages of Texas and what those look like, and how we get across that. So if you wanted to know more about the Texas process, this is the place where you need to go take a look at it. If you want to know more, I think there are still some tickets available. I don't know what the final count was, but I would encourage you to go over to the TNM website at tnm.me. Go look on the calendar, find the Texas Blueprint event, and go get tickets. I think, for me, this has been getting this prepped. It's been about, I don't know, what could we say, 20 years in the making, but it's really condensed. I could take any of the sections of this and do a whole day or a whole week on each section. So it is going to be in depth on the process, but yet there's even still deeper to go. So look, I would encourage you to do it. It will be Saturday. You're going to want to get your tickets online, because if you get them at the door, I think it even costs more. But I have been asked to do this. You guys have been asking for me to do a deeper dive on Texas for a while. And it happens to be, we're doing it in this seminar, which is going to be a fundraiser for the TNM. So I would encourage you to get your tickets. Ricky Tick, right? It's on the calendar. Go find it. Additionally, look, if you haven't already downloaded the TNM app, I mentioned at the very beginning of this how difficult it is becoming to break through some of the algorithmic sickness of big tech. And the bottom line is that you have the power right now to allow us to bypass the gatekeepers, to keep our emails out of your inbox. And it's right there by downloading the TNM app. If you go to tnm.me/app, gives you access to TNM Social. We have just moved the Academy courses over there and are getting ready to add a ton more. When you sign up, when you get on the app, you just use your login that you have for the TNM website. You are automatically assigned to groups for your county, for your House district, for your Senate district, so you can begin right away to network with other Texas supporters right in your own backyard. So I would encourage you right now, head over to tnm.me/app and download the app. All right, friends, that is going to be a wrap. I would just like to say thank you very much. Thank you for your patience. Like I said, we were supposed to be there together 2 weeks ago, but alas, it was not to be. But now you understand why. And I'm looking forward to seeing you the second week of next month as we do this again. That is, if I don't see you at the Texas Blueprint or on the road. By the way, congratulations to our local group in Llano County for 3 years. They held their 36th monthly meeting just this month, and congratulations to those guys, to Frank Machuga, to John Bolgiano. You guys are rock stars. I know y'all have fought and scratched and done everything to get the word out there in Llano County. And I just want you to know, I think you guys are really, really just incredible. So, folks, keep up the good work. We're so excited to be close to Texas independence happening, and you're an integral part of it. So, that being said, my friends, I'm going to leave it with you. That's going to be the end of this bad boy. So, I'm going to leave you with the words that I leave you with every time we're together. They're not my words. They're the words of Sam Houston when he said that Texas will again lift its head and stand among the nations. I believe that time is now, and the question is, will you stand with her? Good night, everyone.